So anyways, I walked into an 11 not knowing any of the mechanics. And of course, I was only there because I needed some of the crests to be able to upgrade my gear from heroic to mythic.
You're really milking this one for a lot of memes.
Should I not?
No, it's fine.
Do we go with a different intro?
Up to you. Up to you.
Okay, so what we got today? We're going to be talking about the gear system. So we talked... In our last video, we kind of talked about the gear system. We talked about the most important things you need to know in 10.1. However, now I think we can have a little bit of a retrospective, at least for the first couple of weeks, of how the gear system has unveiled itself. For those who don't know, I think it's pretty clear if you've played this patch in any meaningful capacity, you're able to upgrade gear with things called crests, and you can get different types of crests that allow you to get different gear of an item level. There's like worms and aspect crests that are typically the most important, but there's also some lower item level ones. And then you also have to have a secondary resource called flight stones that upgrade the gear.
Yeah, you can check out our previous video in this series that was about this upgrade system. It was from like, I guess, 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
And I think I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I think the information that we gave and the strategy guides section of that video ended up being pretty much spot on. So
I also think that we were pretty much spot on with the you can't mess this up. Make sure just upgrade kind of whatever
and
gear you want.
And at this point in the patch as well, we're kind of at that spot where, like, you know, if you're playing and you're not playing much content, your crest economy, maybe if you're only doing like 1 plus 20 key per week and you're only getting an aspect crest, you know, every other week or whatever out of that, maybe you're still going to feel pretty constrained on that. But we're at this point now where there's kind of not a wrong decision to make with upgrades if you do have access to most of the, you know, 450 fragments that you can have of the aspects and worms types. So even then, you know, there's, in theory, you could still hit yourself a little bit, but it's really hard to have made a mistake with this. And that's, I think, my favorite thing about the system is that free upgrade system where if you have higher eye level in the slot, you just get the upgrades for free, basically up to that slot, just for minimal flight stone cost.
Yeah.
That part of the system has been so good.
I think that there's so many cool parts of the system. Yeah, I think that the minimal flight stone cost is super great. The ability, at least for me, whenever I was doing this, and I was taking this a bit more hardcore than I think a lot of players were, I would like drop-optimize my character at 441 item level and then like hunt down every single piece that would like fill out my full Mythic Plus BIS at 441 and then like upgrade those pieces. And I got a lot of enjoyment out of being able to just like super juice my character weeks 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, the system was extremely powerful for I was done on day 8 or 9 of the patch. I was all full build. I assume you were also early in the second reset.
Something similar, yeah.
You know, with that first little infusion of the second cap of crests, got yourself there, and that. Yeah, I mean, our experience is a little bit atypical, right? Because both of us have main characters that have split gear from heroic, so we have extra heroic gear on that first reset. But the thing is, my split alt, is also pretty much full build now, despite like it's done like I guess 2.5 heroic runs now, but it's been low prio gear in that because it's an alt in those runs. It's still got, you know, heroic 4 or 3 pieces of heroic and 1 piece of normal tier, and it's got you know, 437s or 441s in like every slot already as well. It is a wildly powerful gear system, and honestly, even the need for splits for kind of anybody is for any of the top guilds. I'm sure, and any of the top guilds besides like the super top ones. Like honestly, the only reason that splits were valuable for us this tier is because we did like a main swap 2 weeks in, and it was nice to have a geared alt that was ready, and splits facilitated that by having a required alt. But yeah, I mean the upgrade system is bangingly powerful for us, but also just for anybody that was able to clear most of normal and or heroic. Like if you could get 8 out of 9 normal and 5 out of 9 heroic week 1, and then 9 out of 9 and 8 out of 9 week 2, you also were very likely to be close to full build and have 4-piece. Maybe not the 4-piece if you didn't get the free one from the M Plus Master title, but if you were able to do that and get that free token out of that, it was really good.
So there's been actually a lot of discussion, and I think that's something we have to address too, is this gearing system too good? So one of the things you just left off with is it was good, but was it too good? And I mean, I think that there's a bunch of different community discussion posts I've just pulled up a tweet from Thune. It says, is anyone slightly concerned about farm burnout for people doing Mythic this tier? I don't know anyone that truly enjoys farm at all, but there's barely even any upgrades to hunt down. So outside of sales, why would any guild farm Mythic? Now, I think that this is just one potential concern. There's also other potential concerns with things such as early bosses in Mythic dropping already 441 item level gear. So those bosses are, outside of very specific trinkets, pretty much useless. And then there's like also a slight issue with like the gear scaling over the course of the whole entire patch that you've brought up in regards to killing bosses, correct?
So yeah, I will say I do think that something that I think is worth changing is making it so that the first 5 bosses on Mythic are worth killing, especially if the last 4 are going to be worth killing, which they are. I wouldn't mind if we move to a world of like Mythic is only for prestige and the gear isn't any better, but given that like Mythic Sarkareth, Mythic Neltharion, Mythic Zaskar have really powerful best in slot items, the fact that progressing towards those, the first 5 bosses are giving you heroic level gear, right?
Yes.
Like a consequence of heroic giving you mythic level gear is that mythic is giving you heroic level gear off of those first few bosses. And that I do think is worth changing. I don't think you need to do much though to make those bosses worth killing on mythic. I think I would propose either a new upgrade track that those bosses drop loot on mythic that upgrades up to like 447.
And they only drop via mythic?
Yeah, just any item that drops base at 441 or 444 is on just a legend track that goes up to 447.
Okay.
I feel like that would be one way to make those bosses, better than like feel good to kill and get the items from beyond the first time you kill them.
Squishy floated the idea that hero track only goes up to 437 item level. Which
yeah,
also
so the other fix, and maybe you could do both of these, would be to take hero track down by 1 eye level step and then champion by either 1 or 2, which, again, I'm not sure I actually want those things to be nerfed because it is really nice that you can just go into normal heroic and get really good gear, and you still would be able to even if you relatively buffed those early mythic bosses, because those are still going to be equal to what crafted eye level is, right? And that's accessible to everybody pretty quickly this season. So
I guess there's a question of, is this even a problem? So and I think that's something that we have to talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
So this system, it feels very atypical for World of Warcraft. Typically, through the history of WoW, you've grinded like a full season to try to get BIS. Some seasons better than others. Sometimes we have the Corruption Legendary Cape where you never really fully achieve BIS with how the Corruption system worked. Some seasons you also have very rare items that you're kind of always hunting down towards the end of the season and never able to get them. Most seasons you achieve your BIS eventually. And then obviously some seasons are a little bit on the easier end in gearing wise, whenever you think about things such as Shadowlands Season 4 with Dinars, or this season with how the gear is being able to be upgraded here. But even then, achieving BIS, you're not necessarily achieving BIS, but you're certainly getting very close really early on.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad in principle. I do think that, could it be nerfed a little bit, and would it maybe be slightly better for it to be nerfed a tiny bit? And make it so that the curve for depending on how you nerfed this, you wouldn't even necessarily be nerfing. Anytime you and I would propose nerfing a system like this, everybody's gonna be like, oh, but you guys play 62 hours a day and do 12 splits or whatever, so of course you think the gear is too fast or something like that. But depending on how you nerf this, you could nerf it in such a way that targets you and me and not the people that are playing more casually, playing fewer hours. Something like how many crest fragments per week you could earn is something where you and I are capping out on those every week on aspects and worms, but that could be a way to target it to slow down the pace of growth, to make it so that your character is still gaining power on the 3rd and 4th week.
So I mean, you and I've talked about it. You and I have talked about it a little bit off stream. It's like, this is a system that for what, first off, we think is good. We think it's an overall a very positive system. And whenever we talk about nerfing it, it's not even like, oh, they need to completely change what's going on. It's like they need, I think that the impedance on early Mythic raid is something that feels a bit strange. In addition to that, the Great Vault is pretty much dead right now. Like outside of very specific high roll pieces,
Yeah.
The
So there's
great
no like
vault,
trinkets that are good from the M plus rows, so
it's
you're just
just a
looking at
socket.
stats, and crafted pieces are better in those slots. And then the raid rows, even if you're like, I had an 8 out of 9 mythic box that I opened this week that had 441, 444, 444 in it. That those items aren't clickable, right? Like I have mythic plus rows that are 447 below
So,
that, right?
but in addition to that as well, like you have to factor in the fact that crafted more often than not is
Yes.
better than anything that you're going to get out of the vault also. So the vault
Which
got left in
is
a really weird spot.
is the crafted 3 item levels thing a problem? Like crafted is more powerful than it was last season, and last season it was broken. Like it was so good. Last season 418. This season it's effectively 421, right? It's 447.
447,
which
yeah.
is unbelievably powerful. So should they maybe ease off on how high crafted is and bring it back to season 1 eye level? Probably, yeah. I think that would at least make the Great Vault 447s BIS rather than just being like worse versions of the crafted pieces that have your BIS stats on
But I
them.
mean, this is kind of what we were talking about though. Whenever we were saying we wanted deterministic loot in some
Yeah.
capacity, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing though about the Dinar system is that like the Dinar system was similarly really great and powerful, and I think people were talking about like I think that this is a case of like this. It can be like 80% as strong as this and still be really, really, really good. And
Yeah.
also like rather than Dinars, which just got removed entirely, right? Like that was going from Dinars to Aeronog Ring, Whispering Incarnate Icon, Broodkeeper Ring season.
That felt like a disconnect. Yeah.
Felt like a huge downgrade. Whereas this time around, I mean, they've basically already said that they're iterating on this system for next time. So I would say I don't think they have to do any nerfs to it, but I expect that they want to do nerfs to it because I expect that they're going to see the rate of gear acquisition as being too high. And I think that as long as they target the right things to nerf, like if they nerf the free upgrades if you have higher eye levels in that slot, or if they nerf the amount of loot that drops, I think those would be awful ways to nerf the system. But if they gave us slightly less crests per week, if they made it so that the hero and champion tracks went 1 or 2 item level steps lower, I think those would be acceptable nerfs, and I think the crafted gear nerf would be good. There are also some things they should definitely change, which is, first of all, when you're capped on aspect crest, Worm's crest should drop instead.
I agree with that.
That
Yeah.
should just 100% happen. And also, you should be able to roll need on like 428 hero tier, even if you have 437 champion tier, which apparently you can't right now.
Oh,
and that's cursed.
that feels like an
that needs to
oversight.
change.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that overall and I think this is a great system, and I'm glad that they're reiterating
Yeah.
on it. There are systems that sometimes they just kind of lead to the wayside. This is one that I think is an absolute slam dunk. In addition to that, too, I think that something that we have to talk about, like in conjunction with this, is catalyst and tier acquisition just as a whole. This feels okay. The Omni token off Sarkareth, I believe, is a slam dunk. It does make tier acquisition quite fast, especially in conjunction with the AOTC slash 2K rating slash 1600 PvP rating token. That like is all great for being able to acquire tier, and it honestly makes acquiring tier from normal and heroic also valuable, specifically with like the upgrade tracks, in a way that it has not been in the past. And I think that tier, and this is generally true, the most important part of the tier is just having the set bonus itself. It's not necessarily the item level on tier. And gatekeeping people from being able to acquire tier has always felt a bit strange to me. That's why I think that the Omni token and all of this stuff is great from Raid. Now, I'm still a bit hesitant on acquisition process for Mythic Plus, though.
I think that at this point, if you're going to make it this easy to get it from Raid, which feels great,
I'm good with that.
Just make it easy to get it from M Plus as well, right? Like, make it so, and it doesn't have to be as easy as Raid, but just make it so that if somebody's doing like 50 keys and they don't want to kill any Raid bosses, especially when you have a tier like this where killing those Raid bosses is as accessible as it's ever going to be, if that person really doesn't want to do the Raid that much, like, you should not punish them for more than a month with no tier, which is currently the way that the system works. Just give them M plus tier. I don't know. I think that, yeah, Catalyst being open early, like, I saw something on Twitter, I forget where from exactly, but I saw something where basically it's like, what if it costs like an enchanted aspect crest to give you a catalyst charge for the first few weeks, and then, you know, further down the line, they start accruing automatically per week, right? Something like that, where it's like, okay, you know, we can make it, the tier is so polarizing and it's so important for people. And like, yeah, to be the most powerful character you can be, you should be going into raid in the first few weeks of a new season. Like, of course, that doesn't have to change, but it should be less bad if you are the person who's like, I really just never want to go into raid.
Well, I mean, I think that this also impacts PvP in a weird way too, where I think Blizzard views this as a catch-up system. The Catalyst itself, right, is a catch-up system. PvPers aren't gonna raid. Like,
I mean, some will, right? But like, yeah, it's
for a majority of them, they're not.
And like, that's okay, right? Like, you make the raid good, you make it welcoming, you make it rewarding, you make it give you tier week 1.
Yes.
Which this current tier does. But then if somebody still doesn't want to do it, I think that with how important set bonuses are to how classes feel, just gatekeeping that by a whole month is not.
Do you think you should be able to craft it maybe?
Yeah, like a crafted 420 tier or something like that, 424 crafted tier. Tier that if the catalyst just came out with 1 charge per week, you still can get 4-piece week 1 if you raid, right? And then you have to, if you can't raid, at least you get 4-piece week 4 instead of getting, 4-piece week 8 or whatever with the catalyst, right?
Sure. I think overall though, the upgrade system in 10.1 gearing has been honestly some of the best I've ever seen since I've started playing the game. I'm actually very happy with this upgrade system. Now, we've had a lot of really shitty upgrade systems.
Yeah, this is so good.
Just being very plain with you guys, we've had a lot of very bad upgrade systems, and so this is probably the best the upgrade system has ever been. I do expect it to be nerfed a little bit, and I think that it can still get nerfed and still be an absolutely phenomenal system. Yeah,
exactly. I think that's the main thing, is that they choose the right ways to nerf this system, because there are definitely parts of the system where it's like, okay, yeah, maybe this could take a moderate nerf and be fine.
So
right?
What feedback would you give then for them to iterate on the system in the future? What are the things? Okay, so you talked about downgrading worms and aspect crests and the acquisition process for that. You talked about some weird situation where you're not able to upgrade gear.
We'll need on hero if you have champion or whatever. Yeah, again, I got a report that's how that worked. The person could have been lying to me because it seems so weird, because it seems like obvious that it should be able to work that way. But yeah.
Any other iterative processes you think?
Okay, what's going on with these bag spots? I have 8 bag spots that have been monopolized by this system. Why is this necessary? I mean, I accept the trade offer, but I don't see why it's necessary that I have to sacrifice these bag spots.
So you'd rather be a currency as opposed to a bag spot?
Yeah, just throw it in the currency tab, right? And like, I don't know, like, do we really need fragments to be this? Fragments never drop less than 5 from any source except for the whelplings, right? So what if we just divided the numbers by 5 and then made it cost 3 crests to upgrade everything, right? And you just could get, right? Like you deplete a key and you get 1, and you time a key, you get 2 or whatever. And I
think for me, the only things that Blizzard needs to be looking at with this is, first off, how can they continue to make the system good, feel useful to players, and feel useful to all players, especially early on in the season, because that's when the system is going to be the most impactful to a lot of players. But at the same point, how do they utilize it to not diminish early bosses inside of raid? And I think that that's something that they need to be looking at, the balance of those two things. I think beyond that, this is like a really, really good system, though, and I think that it was well designed.
And honestly, I wouldn't mind if this was the catalyst for a discussion about, like, should Mythic Gear even be better than Heroic Gear? Like, what if Mythic became a source only of fun and prestige, and the gear was no longer better than Heroic Gear? I think that's something that could be worth, considering. It's just like, right now that's not true for the last 4 bosses. But then it is true for the first 5, and that is a very strange place. If anything, I think the reverse would make more sense.
I thought Theon had a different tweet about that as well, like where he was talking about that very specific situation where it was like, but it's been like a pretty decent topic from like community members talking about, like, should Mythic Raid even drop anything more than specific items, like very specific trinkets or weapons?
Pre-upgraded items, and it saves you the cost of upgrading them. Like, that's still a nice little thing.
Yeah.
And there's prestige and cosmetics and stuff. I don't know. I mean, I think that's a conversation worth having. But if they decide they still want Mythic Raid to be worth doing, then they should definitely make the first bosses included in that list, because those are the most accessible ones, the ones that the most people do. I'm
also down for a legend upgrade track from items that you get either via the vault or like via Mythic Raid. And I'm talking, whenever I say via the vault, I mean like via like a certain level of Mythic Plus
Yeah,
or
just
PvP.
any item that drops base 441 or 444 goes up to 447, I think would be
Yes.
and the way that it could go up, it could be like a much more time gated card. Like obviously, if you could get 10 of the crests that were involved in that per week, you would instantly have the
You could get
infinite of those. But if it was like you could get one of those crests per week or something that was on that track, then that could be fair, I think.
and it took you 3 to upgrade or something like that.
Yeah,
Right?
well, even if it was just one and it took you one, like that, I think still would be
Sure.
that'd be pretty good. But yeah, I think that is a space to explore if they wanted to make this better, and I wouldn't even be opposed to like later in the patch letting M plus gear that from high keys also start dropping on the legend track or whatever, something like that. I think those are. Like, I think the ceiling, I think the idea of like a catalyst opening moment later in the patch where gear gets better and where like upgrade tracks expand, like if you nerfed hero and champion, but then you buffed them later in the patch. I think if the catalyst opening date was the date that happened rather than the date that you got tier, that would be better because tier is such it feels bad to not have this thing.
I agree.
Whereas a few extra item levels on a few items, I think is the kind of thing that you can give out late in the patch to be like, okay, you didn't get your BIS drop or whatever. Now we're going to give you the means to upgrade anything into that BIS drop if you want late in the patch.
Overall, though, I think you and I kind of agree with this. This is one of the greatest gearing systems they've ever created. In addition to that, this is probably the most alt-friendly patch that's ever existed.
I mean, I feel like it shows a lot of confidence in the game. It's kind of the exact opposite of Shadowlands, where Shadowlands had just hot garbage systems in season 1 and season 2 that were just like, well, we're gonna make you continue your sub and log in to play this game because if you don't do your MAW for the day, you're falling behind.
Your chores.
If you don't do your Torgies,
Yeah.
you're falling behind, right? And now instead they're saying, look, you don't have to do anything. Your character can be fully geared in a couple of days if you want at this point in the patch even. And if you want to log in to play the game because our dungeons and raid is fun, like that is the goal, and that is absolutely a breath of fresh air. And I'm hugely here for it. And I'm trying to think of like what I want to even play this season and what I want to do. And it's
play everything, man. Make a lizard.
Yeah. My lizard is Dratnos and Tettles. That character's already been cooking. Yeah.
Oh snap! All right.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts? I think that's about it for this week.
I think that is it for us. Yeah. Let us know in the comments what you think. Let us know, if you wanted to just say exactly the same, or if you have some ideas for changes that would be made to the upgrade system. If you agree or disagree with us,
I think you and I think you and I saying that this system should be maybe nerfed a little bit is going to be.
I suspect that's gonna draw some ire from the people that have 5 kids and 3 wives and no time to play World of Warcraft, right?
All right. Goodbye.